talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast, the podcast covering high school football in the state of Illinois. I'm Greg Armstrong, joined by my co-host, Mitch Stormer. Mitch, you're back. It's the Three Rivers Athletic Conference preview. This is always a big one. A lot of schools, a lot of names to cover, and it's a competitive conference, top to bottom. This is a fun one.
Yeah, I always love this episode, love talking about these teams. Certainly my old stomping grounds, even though my school is no longer in the conference, but a lot of familiar names there. And like you said, we have two divisions, 6 teams each, and it's really going to be a very, very competitive year, I think. Maybe more so on the Rock side this year, but there's a lot of competition in the Mississippi. There's a lot of storylines for teams. We break it all down. We get into it tonight, and I'm excited for this episode.
Yeah, of course, if we're talking Three Rivers Athletic Conference, Mitch, we got to bring in our conference insider, Ty Taylor. So when we get into the conference previews, we'll bring in Ty Taylor from WRMJ.com. Shout out to him. He put out his conference previews on their website today. Head out, check those out, WRMJ.com. Tons of information, tons of details. It's a really great season preview to kick off. So he does great work, and we'll hear from him and get his expertise, get his knowledge in here.
Yeah, absolutely. No better place to go than WRMJ and Ty for their coverage of the track. So always fun to have Ty on with us.
Yep. So we're talking the Three Rivers this week. Mitch, we've already previewed the NUIC and 8-man football. We've previewed the Lincoln Land Conference, the Big Northern Conference, and of course, we'll have the Western Big Six in next week's episode. This is all part of our conference challenge. So we're challenging all of our conferences we cover. Who can step up? Who can get the most views on their season preview episode on YouTube? Mitch, the reason this whole thing happened is because the NUIC, they carry the crown here every year. And once again, they're still leading the way. They had over 1,700 views in their first week. That's still the most of any of our episodes. Now, all of our episodes have gotten a lot of views, maybe more than they had in years past, but the NUIC continues to carry the crown.
Well, we got a lot of loyalty in the track, a lot of devoted fan bases, both of the conferences we have left to cover, the track and the Western Big Six. We've got a big following there, so there is still some time to dethrone the NUIC. It's a tough task for sure, but we'll see what the friends of the show have in store for us.
Well, of course, we know our fans of the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, they've been itching to get this episode and share it. So if they're listening to this, or anybody who supports the Three Rivers Athletic Conference or the programs within that conference, get out there, use the hashtag VFTW Challenge on X. Share this post when we put it out there, or share the episode, share a link to this episode using that hashtag VFTW Challenge. That will promote this episode. Obviously, you want your program to win the conference challenge, but Mitch, it also puts you in the drawing for a free large Godfather's Pizza in Silvis, Illinois. Thank you to Andy. He caught wind of this whole challenge and he wanted in on it. So if you use the hashtag and share this episode, you enter your name into a drawing for a free Godfather's Pizza. What else could you possibly want this time of year? It's great.
Makes me want to create a bunch of burner accounts and try to win this thing myself, Greg.
Absolutely. So, of course, you can find us on YouTube, find us on X, on Instagram, wherever you follow. We would love your support. Use that hashtag again, VFTW Challenge. Share this episode. Get your conference the most views. Put yourself in the running for that free Godfather's Pizza. We love your support any way you can give it to us. And speaking of supporting the pod, still time to be involved if you want to be a sponsor. It's never too late. We love our sponsors. We love helping out local community businesses. if you want to engage with us and you can help our show build, we'd be happy to have you along for the ride. Sponsors, you can email if you're interested at viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. If you want to donate, if you don't have a business but you want to help support what we're doing here, of course, head to PayPal, paypal.me/viewfromwestpod. So, speaking of sponsors, Mitch, you know who we got to thank.
Yeah, I sure do. Tonight's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and tees here, Greg, online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the costs you're probably used to. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com.
Well, Mitch, I was just texting back and forth, emailing with Abby from Breedloves this week.
Yep.
Things are getting set up for the View from the West live kickoff party at the other bar in downtown Moline. Abby will be there selling merch in person, so she'll have some of the View from the West retro helmet merch for us. So it'll be the View from the West retro helmet. But if you want your specific program, that is available in our online store right now. We have almost every team in the Three Rivers available right now. You can buy it in a t-shirt, in a hoodie. Those are awesome. That Tecmo Bowl, that retro-inspired shirts. I love that look. We're rolling that out for the second year in a row. If you want the View from the West version of that, you can buy it live and in person from Abby from Breedloves at the View from the West live kickoff party. Abby will also be at the party giving away some free hats. We'll have some merch giveaways, some hats, some newly designed hats, Mitch. They've never been seen by anybody, well, except me and you, but to the general public, they'll be brand new. So I can't wait to roll those out that night. So there it is. We've already previewed it. The second annual View from the West kickoff party set live Sunday, August 9th at the other bar in downtown Moline, 4 to 6:30. There will be Godfather's Pizza there. Breedlove selling merch on site. We'll have those giveaways we talked about. And if you attend, the team of your choice can get entered into a drawing for a special edition View from the West kickoff party t-shirt for your program. So last year, the Fulton Steamers brought home the shirts. So this year, who can win that program t-shirt? It's a great way to, have a little fun with it and win something for your program. So I encourage everybody, coaches, parents, fans, anybody who loves high school football. It's a great way to come down and kind of celebrate the kickoff of the 26th season.
Absolutely. And it sounds more and more as we've gotten texts and emails, RSVPs, I should say. It's going to be a great time. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it this year. Once again, unfortunately, I'll be watching from the sidelines as yourself, Matt Randazzo, Brian Stocking, a host of people are going to do just a tremendous job of having the conversation and good times flowing there at the other bar on Sunday. So looking forward to seeing the show. And again, we thank everyone for the support of being there, whether you're a coach, a player, a fan. Thank you for supporting the program and getting the whole gang together before the season kicks off. So thank you so much to everyone.
Yeah, really excited. We'll have a lot of coaches there. They'll be interviewed live during the show. We'll have maybe some players there that we'll bring up and talk to live during the show. It was a great time last year. I'm really excited for it again this year. Like we said, just a great way to kick off the high school football season. So one more reminder, share this episode. If your team is in the TRAC and you want to share this episode, make the TRAC the most listened to episode by using the hashtag VFTW challenge and support your conference. Put yourself in for a chance to win a free Godfather's Pizza. So Mitch, we'll have a lot to preview and a lot to talk about in the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. One quick note I want to mention, we put out a social media post on X this week. Matt Randazzo's talked about it on his show as well. We want to throw out our support and, all of our prayers for Drew Hawk out of Rock Ridge. He's a football player who was injured in an incident off the field, a pretty serious injury that he's working through. They're doing a fundraiser, raising money for some T-shirts. Those are still on sale. I believe they close down the T-shirt sales in the next couple days, but we're trying to find ways to kind of help support him and help support his family any way we can. And there'll be more information on that in our next week episode, but also on the live show. We're hoping to have some ways to help support Drew and his fight and, and his family as well. Cause it's an unfortunate situation and we're really pulling for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's times like this that we're thankful for the community that we're in, because it seems like everyone pulls together for a common cause. So I'm looking it up right now, Greg. Those T-shirt sales are good for another 24 hours.
Okay.
So I believe it would be. Now I got to try and do math in my head. I think it's end of the day, Wednesday.
Okay.
I think Thursday at midnight is the cutoff.
Okay.
Maybe it's Friday. I don't really know. It's late here. But the time is running out. If you're listening to this show, it's Tuesday morning. I would say that you have about a day to get those orders in. So we'll make sure that we share that link. And as Greg mentioned, we have more news coming out on that in the future. So, we're pulling for that community. And I think we're not the only ones.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, well, thank you to everyone who listens. Stick around, and we'll hit a quick break, and we'll jump into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference preview. Take your quarterback play to the next level. Train with Dean Passing Academy. Learn directly from Braden Dean, former Rock Ridge standout and the Midwest Conference Offensive Skills MVP at Monmouth College. At Dean Passing Academy, quarterbacks receive elite instruction focused on mechanics, decision-making, and game-like situations pulled directly from film. Serving the Quad Cities metro area and beyond. Call 309-798-1094 to learn more and schedule your training today. View from the West podcast is brought to you by First Wealth Financial Group. Do you have a comprehensive financial plan or simply an investment portfolio? Are your investments part of a coordinated strategy aligned with your goals, or a collection of products accumulated over time? Partner with a team built around your goals. Preserve what you've built. Grow with intention. Contact First Wealth Financial Group at 563-242-1885 or visit their website at firstwealthfinancialgroup.com.
This is Dan Pearson. Our Fellowship of Christian Athletes team is pleased to partner with View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Bringing sports and the gospel together is our game plan as we serve 23 counties in our Northwest Illinois multi-area. Yes, all with schools covered by View from the West. Reach out to me if you want to get plugged in with FCA.
FCA, every coach, every athlete.
When it comes to quality, convenient pizza, Godfather's Pizza in Silvis has you covered. Featuring a beautiful dine-in area, delivery, and a carry-out window. Godfather's Pizza is that pizza you grew up with, not a convenience store. You see, at Godfather's Pizza, the dough is made fresh daily. That mozzarella cheese is shredded fresh and never frozen. And those toppings are abundantly piled high each and every time. Locally owned and operated since 2010, Godfather's is a huge supporter of local athletes right here in the Quad Cities. So come on by and check them out at 1211 Avenue of the Cities in Silvis. Order online at godfathers.com and reunite with that same delicious pizza you grew up with.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
Welcome back. Let's talk some Three Rivers Athletic Conference football for 2026. If we're talking track, you know we're bringing in our conference insider, Ty Taylor, the voice of WRMJ. Ty, it's good to have you back in the View from the West studios here. Ready to roll.
It's great to be here. It's great to see both you and Mitch. I think the last 2 years we've done this, Mitch has not been on here with us, so it's great to have him on the preview. And I want everybody to know that that was the second take as we put the we pull the curtain back. Greg, he started with the track, and then he went. When he introduced me, he mentioned the Western Big Six. That's just because Alleman's going to be the newest member of the track, right?
Oh, that's why I made the mistake. Exactly. So Ty, we previewed earlier in the episode about the View from the West kickoff party on August 9th. Last year, you were unable to make it because you were in the middle of a three-peat.
I was there last year.
Oh, shoot, you were there last year.
I hung out with Brian Stocking.
But the Viola Tropics did get the three-peat last year.
Yeah,
correct?
we did. Yes,
okay,
we did.
Well, now you're on the quest for a true dynasty here. The four-peat is in the works, so your attendance is in question for Sunday.
I believe that's the rain date for our league tournament. Now, if you look behind me over my shoulder here, there is a poster that John Nelson gave me when the Rockridge softball program had their historic three-peat of IHSA softball state championships. Now, off to the right is the trophy of our softball league, and we're going for a four-peat. So I keep telling everybody that if we can do that next weekend, we will take over. The Rockridge softball program is the most legendary athletic run in the Quad Cities area, and the Mercer County Adult Softball League. It's appropriate they're right next to each other back there.
Yeah, put the green metal sign there on the entrance of town, letting everybody know about the Tropics dominance.
I see no way to argue any of it. So Ty, you were there last year. Do you have a View from the West koozie?
I do. I do. It's in my car.
Mitch, do you have a View from the West koozie?
Still do not have one. Of any color, of any size, no, I don't.
Well, if you can make the trip, Mitch, it's there waiting for you. It'll be on a table waiting for you.
No, you say that when you had them at state, and I still left without them. So I wouldn't trust myself to even remember to do that. So you're giving me too much credit there.
All right. Well, here we go. We got Ty Taylor in the house. We're going to talk some track football, some Friday night traction, if you will. Shirt available in the Breed Loves merch store right now. Go out and check that out, of course. Go get that one.
Well, Greg, I remember when it was the Big Rivers, just for the record.
That's true. All right. Let's get into the rock side of things here. We're going rock in Mississippi because that's what the IHSA website says it is. Brian Stocking is screaming at his podcast device right now, but I'm going with rock in Mississippi. I think it sounds cool, and it's our podcast. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to start with Newman. Newman Central Catholic head coach Mike LeMay had the Comets at 7-2 in the regular season, 8-3 overall, lost in the second round. They returned 6 on offense and 8 on defense. So a good number of returners for a really good program year in, year out. Matthew Blackert, a name we called a lot last year, over 800 yards, 12 touchdowns. Rylan Alvarado, another running back, just over 500 yards and 7 touchdowns. I'll start right there. Mitch, I think those running backs, that tandem, they're a really good duo together in the backfield. They complement each other really well. That's a great start, not to mention a lot of other names that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yeah, for sure. Blackert was such a big piece of their offense last year. And Alvarado, in his first year last year in that Newman offense, you saw glimpses of it, right? He's a very, very good speedster, has done a lot of great work in the spring on the track. So another year in Mike LeMay's system. Certainly they like running the ball there at Newman. They always have, right? So excited to see what Rhineland can do this year, but to have an athlete on both sides of the ball like Matt Blackert coming back, it's a huge boost for this Newman team up front.
Yeah, they will have to replace the quarterback position. The name we're seeing is Renner Rosengren, a senior quarterback, a dual threat, big, a big guy, a big quarterback. Started on defense last year. Some of his targets offensively, John Rosie is back again this year, 533 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. Tyson Williams, also another tight end, had over 200 yards and another 5 touchdowns there. A name to watch on the offensive line is Matthew Murray. So a really strong offense all the way around.
I have been texting with Coach LeMay this offseason, just kind of getting his thoughts on how he feels his team is progressing in the offseason and as they've started practices. And he's really excited, guys, and I think he has very good reason to be. He's been very pleased with the team's progression, making good strides over the summer. We talk about some of those names on offense, but I think where Coach LeMay's focus at the moment is on that line. And really making sure that the guys like Blackert and Alvarado and Rosengren, even as a dual threat quarterback, are going to have ample opportunities to show off their skills. So Coach LeMay is very excited. He's excited about Rosengren, kind of like you mentioned, that just a big athletic kid. We've seen Newman more and more get into the passing game. I think we're going to see more of that with Rousey and Williams. So he's excited. But on the defensive side, we'll see guys like Parker Strawman, 33 tackles last year with an interception. Aiden Gutierrez. Alvarado had 45 tackles on defense last year as well. Riley Mason was a name we talked about a lot at linebacker, 78 tackles a season ago with an interception. Matthew Murray on that defensive line, 59 tackles. So this is a group that's really experienced. We'll get into that in just a second. But on both sides of the ball, they're going to bring back a lot of snaps that have played over the last 1, even 2 seasons for Newman.
Yeah, Ty, what are your thoughts here initially?
I think really kind of like what Mitch was saying, what sticks out is just the experience they have defensively. Of course, we know with Newman and just kind of what that program has been, it feels like every year really, really solid on that side of the ball. I think you said 8 starters back. They gave up a little bit less than 20 points per game last year. So I think, for me, that's kind of where it starts. I think offensively, there's a lot of potential with the 2 running backs you mentioned. It's always a little bit kind of interesting to see a new quarterback take over too. So especially with Newman's offense nowadays, where it isn't just like the smash mouth that it, traditionally was. They still can do that, obviously, but they like to spread it out and throw it a little bit more nowadays. So to kind of see how that goes, because I thought that, the quarterback who graduated last year, Evan Bushman, did such a great job of kind of spreading the field and getting the ball to his receivers. So that's, I think, maybe their biggest question mark is just, new quarterback. How does it look with the system they run now? But I think with their 2 running backs, Blacker and Alvarado, and then with their defense, if there is any sort of learning curve or like a slow start at that spot, I think by the time that everything gets clicking, they should be good to go. So I expect this team to be very competitive, very tough to beat. Typical Newman football, right? I mean, there's not much more to say than that.
Yeah, I think that, we kind of talked about all of it in there, but developing that offensive line and the quarterback quickly, to me, becomes important for this Newman offense. But certainly, especially early in the season, you could get bailed out with Blackert and Alvarado making plays almost on their own, right? Like, you can kind of get your offense up to speed when you have that sort of talent to help along the way. I think that'll be a big thing, especially early on in the season. Ty, you talked about in your write-up, which I should shout out, WRMJ.com, you have your full track preview now. Every team, really good, detailed articles all written up. And you had mentioned, and I think it's important to note, that Newman is almost assuredly going 2A, that now they won't have a waiver. They'll have the multiplier, and that they're almost, and you never really know how it shakes out, but they're leaning more towards 2A this season.
It looks that way. Their enrollment, I think, is like 298 and then a decimal because of the multiplier. They don't have like 0.65 of a person in the school. That's how it works. But I think, and obviously it remains to be seen, because with the expanded playoffs, I guess we'll see what that does to the classification cutoffs when we get to the playoffs, which is a ways away. But I would expect them kind of be right on that 1A, 2A line, which they have been the last number of years. It feels like they went 2A the past couple of seasons. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, I'm really kind of interested to see what those numbers look like once we kind of get a clearer picture of what the playoffs will look like with this new format for the first time. But I don't know, more intrigue with that this year too, I guess.
Well, yeah, more intrigue with kind of the playoff structure in general, and we'll talk a lot about that, I think, throughout the rest of these previews. But, Mitch, we always like to talk about maybe the off-the-field stuff, the kind of fun traditions. Newman has a ton of them. Tell us about the father-son campout that we're learning about here.
Yeah, certainly one of the most tradition-rich programs that we cover. But one of their pride and joys is the annual father-son campout at Camp Benson before the season. It's an event that players and father figures get to spend time together before the season really kicks off. And it's just become a tradition shared by every coach on the staff, if it's a former player or a parent. So they take a lot of pride there in the father-son campout. So I'm sure this year's event will be just the same. And they love their tradition at Newman. So,
yep. So Newman opens up with a crossover game hosting Sherrard That'll actually be on Saturday, August 22nd. So the Saturday of opening week.
I do looking at their schedule. I think we're going to know. I mean, we're going to have to wait a little bit, but I think if the three of us were to, talk through this as we will, I think we're going to be high in Newman, we're going to be high in Riverdale, we're high in Rock Ridge. Newman they host Riverdale in week 7. They go to Rock Ridge in week 8. So towards the end of that season, that back third of the season, I think we're going to learn a lot more about those 3 teams, and maybe that we have to wait until then to know who's going to win this division.
Yeah. There's another team in there that might be a sleeper, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Sure. There's good teams all over here. I'm going to say the way I think it's going to play out. I think it'll be one of those 3 teams, and we'll have to wait until week 8 maybe before it plays itself out.
All right, let's get to the Riverdale Rams. Mitch, you just mentioned him. Head coach Guy Derricks last year, 6-4, finishing the season. They also returned 6 on offense, 8 on defense. So they finally broke through last year. They got back to the postseason, earning their spot in the 2A playoffs, which was something that Guy Derricks and that program had been building for and working for. It's a great story. We talked a lot about it throughout the year. Now it's that encore, right? You got to keep the program moving, and I think there's some names that we called out a lot last year that are missing, that have graduated, but you got to really like what Coach Derricks is doing here, and kind of the foundation is still there. When you're talking about Abram Creer is back again, over 800 yards, 8 touchdowns, rushed 70 times, 300 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I think that's a piece you look at immediately. I think he takes the next step. I think he becomes maybe even more of a focal point on this offense. Jackson Tegler, a wide receiver, had almost 500 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. He was honorable mention all conference. Jackson Fritsch back on the offensive line. Marcus Bennett back on the offensive line. Carter Orr also back on the offensive line. So starting on the offensive side of things, I think Creer is going to be a big focal point this year. Don't you think, Ty, just looking at his numbers last year?
Yeah, and I think, too, when you take the step, especially the quarterback position from, like, junior year to senior year, it feels like there's always a jump there. And they just have so much talent back. I mean, offensively, really, I know they have to replace the 2 main running backs, but you mentioned Jackson Tegler, who's such a great multi-sport athlete, such a great pass catcher for them. And I think up front, they'll be really, really strong. I mean, they have some huge kids that play up front for them. I mean, monsters last year. Like, when I saw them in person, I'm like, oh, my God. Like, the size of some of these kids. I know, like you mentioned, Fritsch and Bennett are back, and they've been, I think both really impact players since they were freshmen at Riverdale. And then, I think, though, when you look offensively for them, like I said, the question mark kind of is just what they're going to do in the backfield because of the 2 kids, Gage Heinsohn and Kane Beckett, that they lost to graduation, did so much offensively for them, kind of both rushing, and then Beckett, too, a pass catcher. But I remember a kid last year, I think Lucas Dunbar was his name. He played on defense and got a few not a few, but he carried the ball a little bit for them offensively, really kind of explosive in the kick return game too. So that's a kid that I think they'll probably lean on to kind of pick up some of that production in the backfield. But just like Newman, when you have 8 starters back on a defense on a team that was as successful as they were last year, I think that's the side of the ball that you look at too. And I think with Riverdale, we talked about this last year. I remember, Greg, going into the season, we talked, this is the year, meaning 2025, that they can take the step forward and kind of break down that wall, get to the playoffs. This team this year, I think, is kind of the group they've been waiting for. Like, this is, I think, the season they've circled. And I don't just think this team, is going to be good. I think they have the potential to be really good. And I think that there's a chance. I don't know if maybe you say they're the favorite. I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later on. But this is a team that could win a conference championship in the TRAC. I really do think so. They're good as long as they can stay healthy. The core they have is great, so I'm very high on them this season.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing to point out for them is, taking the next step. Now, under normal circumstances, last year they made the playoffs. This year, I think you look at, if it was under regular condition, you want to get to that, 5, 6, 7 wins. I think they can still get there, but now I think the goal for them under the new structure is you want to get that bye, right? You want to get into that, what we would call the traditional first round of the playoffs. And I think this team, that's the next step under this new structure. I think they can get there, absolutely. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, Tegler, as you mentioned, he had 31 tackles, 2 interceptions. He was first team all-conference. Fritsch and Bennett, also on the defensive line, were returning all-conference selections. Lucas Dunbar, which you mentioned, potentially on offense. As a linebacker, he had 50 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, a forced fumble. Brady Rogers is back as a linebacker, 80 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 2 forced fumbles. He was an honorable mention all conference. So Mitch, a lot to be excited about here for this Riverdale program. What do you look at as kind of the keys or, something that needs to go right for this Riverdale Rams team to have success?
Well, think of it this way, guys. This senior class, their freshman year, they were 0-9, right? When they were 8th graders, there wasn't a varsity team. So that's the progression. No team, 0-9, 4-5, 6-3, and now here we are. I think 6-3 is the floor for this team. Looking at their schedule, I'm really excited about Riverdale. We've talked about the job that Coach Derricks has done, not only staying when things got tough, but really just building this Riverdale Rams team back up to where they can get back to the playoffs for the first time in 14 years and just continue to build off that. So I like everything you just talked about with Riverdale football, to be honest with you. They, as Ty mentioned, they do have to replace some key skill position guys. Certainly Beckett and Heinsohn were outstanding players. But if Riverdale wants to take that next step, like I said, I think 6-3 is a floor. I think there's a path to get to 7-2. But just to keep elevating every single week, and this will be a playoff team, I have no doubt about that. It just might look a little different than what we saw last year's playoff group.
Yeah, I think that what has happened throughout this, program's history in recent years, you really see the culture change because of the commitment and the buy-in of these players. So, the group last year, that senior group last year certainly has a lot to be proud of because they got them to the playoffs. And now the juniors last year going into their senior year know that, man, they have a huge opportunity to take the next step.
Yeah, and I came across this today, and shout out to whoever's running the Riverdale Rams Facebook page, but they posted a video from their locker room, and one of their kids, it's Jackson Fritsch, as a matter of fact, squatting 525 pounds. And the team is just hype. That didn't exist a couple of years ago at Riverdale. It just didn't. So it's a total culture change. And yeah, really excited for Riverdale this year.
Yep. All right. We'll see what they could do. Let's keep moving our way through the conference. Orion. The Orion Chargers have a new head coach for what? The first time in 17 years, Ty? Is that the number?
17 years. Yes. Welcome, yes. Coach McLean.
So, yes, Coach Matt McLean, we interviewed him in the offseason. You go back and check that out in our archives. Really, he was a fun guy to talk to. Really, even early on in the process, was really motivated and really excited about this group and kind of taken over. And he came from a bigger school in Davenport North, but he says he's a small town guy and he loves kind of the feel of Orion and he loves what he's seeing out there. So what he has coming in here is a lot of returning starters, but obviously this group might look a little different, right? Because we have to start with Cale Filler has graduated, the quarterback for 4 years, put up remarkable numbers from freshman year all the way through senior year. He'll be playing at Monmouth College this fall, and for good reason. So I think with him graduating, maybe that offense makes, a little bit of a switch. And especially when you start talking about a head coaching change also in the mix, there's new ideas or different ways to go about it. So we'll start on the offensive side of the ball for the Chargers. Charlie Arnold is back as a halfback. Aiden Langang at running back as well. Aaron Moore, who is a player that Coach Filler had me watching for last year as a wide receiver, is back again this year. And Grayson Weaver on the line. On the defensive side, Arnold again as a defensive end. Langang as an outside linebacker. Moore as a cornerback. Jackson Noyd as a cornerback. And Mason Leilman as a linebacker. So what Coach McLean likes about this team heading in, team speed, athleticism, thinks they're going to be fast and physical on defense. On the offensive side of the ball, he really wants to be multiple and keep opponents guessing. So I think that I'm excited to see what Coach McClain can do with this Orion offense and some players that we know that were in the system that Chip Filler had and had a lot of success with that offense. What can Matt McClain do here, Ty, you think, to kind of make it look different, but kind of keep building on some success?
That's the interesting thing, is that when I was talking to him preseason, he described it as a brand new offensive system, but didn't really go any further than that. So I don't really know exactly what it's going to look like. I'm interested to see, just because, like we were kind of talking about off the beginning with Orion, is, it's the first new head coach in 17 seasons. Coach Filler had been there for 27 years overall.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, it's a completely new staff of everybody. So it will, I think, look different. It's going to be kind of weird seeing them play different, just because Coach Filler, his offense was so successful and it was so kind of distinct. Like, you knew what you were seeing just because he had been there for so long. I think for them, one of the things I'm looking at is up front. Now, they've struggled, I think, up front the past couple of seasons because they've been so young at those spots. They have three-year senior starting offensive linemen returning this season. So I think maybe for the first time in a handful of years, you could maybe point to that as a strength. And outside of that, offensively, there's just so much production, like you talked about, with Cale Filler graduating, Owen Voorhees graduating. I mean, two kids who combined for so many points that they accounted for.
They set View from the West history when they were co-players of the week. We could not split it up one week. They both scored 6 touchdowns combined together. Like, it was just, we couldn't split them up. So anyway, not to interrupt.
I was there. It was in Alito. Yeah, it was quite a performance.
Yes.
So, and then defensively, it's kind of a similar story where they just have not been able to get stops really the last 3-4 years, and they just have given up way too many points. And I think that maybe is the number one thing that Coach McClain has to try to clean up a little bit, is just, getting off the field, forcing teams to punt the ball or turning them over on downs or getting turnovers, just because I mean, I think last year in all 6 of their losses, they gave up 40 or more points, and that just is unsustainable to try to compete in those games. So I think the biggest step forward for them has to be defensively in 2026, but I'm excited to see what everything looks like. There's intrigue, I think, always when there's like a brand new, not just head coach, but entire coaching staff. So I'll be interested in how the Chargers look in week 1, that's for sure.
Mitch, what are your thoughts?
Well, Ty just took my key away. I think the first thing that they'll need to really look at, obviously with a new system, new coaching staff, there's a lot of things, but I think Ty just nailed it. 37 points a game last year. Like, look no further than where that is. And they were in a lot of their games because their offense was so potent, but they've got to shore that up on the defense. So with 6 guys coming back, and you get a little bit of a foundation there, some experience, but it could be a whole new kind of defensive scheme there. But shore that up first. But I think just in general, this is, you kind of got to pull a Riverdale, right? You got to change the culture here a little bit, get back to establishing that new identity now with the coaching staff. So Coach McClain's got his work cut out for him, I think, but likes his team speed. I think with the way that they start their season, they've got an opportunity to get off on the right foot, and maybe that'll help them down the road. So, I think it's going to be fun to watch Orion here in this new regime.
Yeah, well, when we talked to Coach McClain in the offseason, his big emphasis was, if you only allow, 14, 21 points, and you can score one touchdown per quarter, you're going to win football games. And so it's easy to spell it out that way, but can you execute it? I think that's, what we're all talking about here. That's the challenge. I'm, again, like you guys said, I'm interested to see how it looks and how it feels, when they get on the field here. Mitch, like you mentioned, there's an opportunity, I think, early in the season. They open at home against Mendota. In week 2, they go on the road at Sherrard. So
Yep.
Big rivalry game between Orion and Sherrard. We'll talk more about the Tigers later, but a new head coach there as well in a rivalry game there in week 2 with both programs trying to establish a new identity. That's an interesting start to the season for Orion, see if they can take advantage of some of those games. So, all right, let's get into the Mercer County Golden Eagles. Ty, it's a team you know very well. You're calling them week in and week out. Is that going to be your primary beat once again this fall?
Yes, the Golden Eagles, my alma mater.
That's right.
Let's go.
That's right. A proud Golden Eagle. I was covering your games when you were in high school, so you know how it goes. It's, I've been there. I've seen it. So, all right. Fred Lucas back again this year, 2025. It was a struggle. 2-7 overall. They returned 3 on offense. They returned 3 on defense. On the offensive side of the ball, you have Logan Schreers at a running back, Brady Heinrichs at offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, same 2 players going to be back making an impact as a defensive back would be Schreers and defensive lineman in Heinrichs. So, Ty, I'll start with you. There was a lot of talent last year on this Golden Eagles roster, and I know they had a little bit of injuries, but overall, I think maybe was there a struggle just to kind of adapt to the new system that Fred Lucas is putting in? They're going to a wing T style offense, kind of an old school grounded pound approach. Is maybe under the second year of that going to be maybe a little more familiarity, finding more success?
Yeah, I talked with Coach Lucas at a 7-on-7 event maybe about a month ago at this point, and that's something that he really kind of stressed was he felt like just like the installation in the offseason of stuff has gone so much smoother this year because, I mean, they went from basically spread 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers, shotgun every play to wing T, under center snaps, some double tight, double wing stuff from 2024 to 2025. So, I just think that's such a shock where a lot of kids are playing completely different positions now. Talking about, going from maybe a wide receiver to a tight end or a wide receiver to a running back. And that's some of the personnel they had to shift. I do think, maybe their tailbacks and running backs this year are a little bit more, I think, wing T style running backs maybe than the kids they had last year. But I think probably, like you said, the biggest struggle was just adjusting because by the middle of the year, there were flashes where they played the style they wanted to offensively, where they would just kind of slowly, methodically, pick up a first down and move down the field. And they had a handful of scoring drives last year that I thought were really impressive, but kind of a similar story to the Orion. They just could not get enough stops last year to stay in games, and their turnover differential, sometimes you can't control that stuff totally. I think it was a little bit unlucky where it was just like a horrific number where I think they went something like 7 weeks in a row without forcing a turnover on defense. And, it felt like every week they were fumbling 3 or 4 times and giving the ball to the other team. So I think, that will, that gap will, I think, shorten a little bit just based off of, I don't think they'll turn the ball over as much as they did. And theoretically, they should be able to force more turnovers just by playing the games if the ball can kind of bounce their way a little bit this year too. I know special teams is a big focus for them. 2 years ago in 2024, their first year in the TRAC, it was not good for 9 weeks, and it improved last year. They still struggled on kick coverage a little bit, and that's something that, the margin for error is not very big in this conference, and like everything is so important, it feels like, and they've put themselves behind the 8 ball on special teams the last couple of seasons, I think more than they'd like to. I do think, though, there is potential for this group. Now, they're going to be really, really young. They only have something like 4 or 5 seniors, but their junior group is pretty talented, in my opinion, and they have some sophomores that I think will be able to play at the varsity level this year. But again, I think it's got to take care of the ball because, like I said, their margin for error isn't going to be really that large. So we'll see in 2026, but I think there is a little bit of excitement around the program this year and some optimism coming into the year.
Yeah. Now, Mitch, Ty sees him week in and week out, talks to him every week, but what else he got there?
Well, yeah, I mean, Ty said everything you need to know. Just looking at their schedule, man, it's a bit of a gauntlet. Weeks 2 through 6.
Brutal.
Princeton, Monmouth-Roseville, Rockridge, Newman, Riverdale, and Erie Prophetstown back to back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
So they're going to be battle tested. There's no doubt about that. Now, with the new format in place for the postseason, and you can get in with a much lesser record than you have in years past. If they can get in at 2-7, if they have the same record they have last year, that might potentially get them into a postseason thing. So it'll be interesting, but they're definitely going to get battle tested in those in weeks 2 through 6. That's a pretty impressive gauntlet to go through.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, looking at their schedule, week 1, it's like sometimes hyperbolic to say, but that is the biggest game of the season for them, is against Hall week 1, in my opinion. That is a huge game for Mercer County season. When you look at their schedule, like you said, weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I mean, you haven't seen any of these teams play, so you can't really say this team's a favorite, this team's not a favorite, but those are going to be games that will be, I mean, battles to win. I mean, you have to play really, really well to beat all of those teams that you just listed in order. So, yeah, week 1 is a big, big game for the Golden Eagles, that's for sure.
Yeah. Man, it is kind of wild to think about when we talk about how hard the middle of that schedule is. Consider how that conversation would have went a year ago when we're saying, man, that's 5, 6 tough games right in a row. And this year, you kind of flip that narrative and say, man, if you can survive that, and if you can pull an upset in one of those games and win the other games around it, you're going to be playing an extra game, maybe 2, or, who knows how many extra games come playoff time. So it is a weird dynamic shift when you look at a schedule that's really hard, like that middle that Mercer County has, but there's still opportunity there, I think, maybe, whereas in years past, it would have been pretty hard to envision. So that'll be interesting to follow along with for sure. So, all right, let's get into Erie Prophetstown. Tyler Whitebread has the Panthers back this year. They were 6-3 in the regular season a year ago, lost in the first round of the playoffs to Aurora Christian, but they returned 6 on offense, 6 on defense. On the offensive side of the ball, Tristan Hovey, a running back, goes over 1,000 yards. He had 5 touchdowns, second team all-conference. I was really impressed when I saw him play. I think he'll be a big impact player again this year for them. Looking at quarterback Evan Steinley, that will be replacing Keegan Winkler, who was very impressive at the quarterback position a year ago. But Steinley steps in, replacing Winkler. You also have a wide receiver in Lane Decker. He steps in for Gavin Adams. You also had Max Milam last year, who's a really big impact player for that team over the last few seasons. Connor Keegan was another impact player that graduated. They graduate some big names, but they return, I think, a lot of depth here. So Caleb Reamer as a unanimous first-team all-conference player on the offensive line. You have a center in Brecken Sandrock, returning starter. Mason Minson, returning starter on the offensive line as well. Noah Wetzel steps in as a first-year varsity player to be in the backfield along with Hovey. So I think there's a lot, again, like I said, depth there and a lot of talent just kind of waiting to emerge for this program in Erie Prophetstown. On the defensive side of the ball, Derek Nafsker, a unanimous first-team all-conference player, very good on the defensive line. Reamer, who we just mentioned, will be on the defensive line as well. Steinley will be a linebacker on the defense. Hovey will be a linebacker on defense, and John Holland on the defensive line. So, Mitch, when we talk through a lot of these names, it's a mix of some talent we've seen and some proven talent, and then some new guys that feel like they're ready to step right in and have an impact.
Yeah, those names that you just mentioned and their accolades. I mean, this is an experienced group coming back. I think Derek Nasker playing on the line on both sides of the ball will be one of the best players that we don't talk about, just because of us not talking about linemen enough more than we should, more than we do. But with Raymer and Nasker, I think both lines are going to be big problems for opponents this year. I'm excited to see what this EP team can do in terms of controlling the game in the trenches, right? Every coach is going to give you that football speak about you got to win the battle of the trenches. Well, EP might be better equipped to do that than some of the other teams in this, or most of the other teams, I should say, in this division, maybe even in this conference. So maybe I've downplayed my excitement about Coach Whitebread and the Panthers this year. I just, from top to bottom in this division, I think it's going to be competitive week in and week out. So just looking at this group, I think you mentioned replacing the quarterback is going to be probably the number one thing, but when you've got a line like that, when you've got Hovey there, EP is going to be primed and ready to compete week in and week out with some of these other teams that maybe we're thinking are going to finish first and second. EP is going to be right there.
Yeah, Ty, what do you like about this Panther squad?
Really what Mitch said, we talked about how high we were on Riverdale and how high we are on Newman, and there's another team we'll talk about in a moment probably that we're going to be pretty high on as well. But I think when you talk about like this conference race, Erie Prophetstown, I think is a sleeper is the way I would put them. I don't think maybe people have them on their radar as much coming into the season. But I think they definitely have the personnel and the pieces to compete with the upper echelon of the conference this season. And like you talked about, 4 of 5 offensive linemen back, and 2 of them with Derek Knopfsker and Caleb Reamer, 2 of probably the top 5 linemen in the conference, probably coming in at least. And then a 1,000-yard rusher from last year back too. So I think they're really going to be able to find success, to Mitch's point, kind of just running the ball right at you, at least early on. And again, kind of like we were talking about with Newman, it's nice for the new quarterback, whoever that's going to be for them, to be able to settle in a little bit, knowing that we can really rely on this proven running game that we have, not just with a really talented running back, but a really strong offensive line too. And like you said, defensively, they should be pretty strong with a lot of key impact guys back, especially, in the front 7, I would say, for them too. So yeah, they're a team that is interesting coming in. And I think week 1, they play Monmouth-Roseville, which should be an awesome game. And we didn't mention earlier, but Riverdale and Princeton play in week 1 this year too. So those are a couple of really big games. But I think like Erie Prophetstown, Monmouth-Roseville, with, as we've talked about, what we think Erie Prophetstown will lean on this year and what Monmouth-Roseville has kind of traditionally done, especially the last couple of years, that's going to be a smash mouth game right off the bat, man. Let's go.
I remember it was later in the season, but I remember an Erie Prophetstown Monmouth-Roseville game from a few years ago that was a great game, a really good football game. So yeah, I'm very excited to see that one. That one will be at Erie Prophetstown. I believe they're playing home games in the regular season in Prophetstown this season. I think I read that.
That is correct, yes, because I got to go there. Yep.
There you go. Actually, I love it.
It's a great field, Ty. It's a great field.
I didn't say it wasn't. It just is a little farther away than Erie is. That's all I'm saying.
I love getting the opportunity to go to Prophetstown.
There's a Casey's right across the street. You're going to be just fine.
I know. I've frequented that Prophetstown Casey's many times. Yes, I have.
The Prophetstown Casey's, not a sponsor, Mitch, but could be.
Oh. Always could be.
There's
always
a Casey's in every town you go in this conference.
There has been a letter sent asking the Casey's organization if they want to sponsor. I did not hear anything back. We're waiting.
We have from here too. We should team up maybe. Send one letter instead of 2.
That's right. We're waiting to hear back. So, all right. We'll get into the Rock Ridge Rockets, the Three Rivers Rock Division champs from a year ago. Head coach Sam Graves returns this Rockets team. They were 10-1 on the season. They got 5 back on offense, 5 back on defense. So a good number on both sides of the ball for a team and a program that's had a lot of talent over the past few seasons. The name you got to start with, Cullen Schweigen, back at quarterback, back at the linebacker position, has such an impact on both sides of the ball that's the foundation you need, and that's the foundation that's going to bring you to a lot of success. But along with him, Thomas Sowards back at running back. I think that's a nice piece that he has, another weapon, another option there. Also, Wyatt Osborne back as a wide receiver. what I found year over year is that Schweigen is able to make these connections with the next wide receiver up, right? Like whoever's turn it is, it seems like that wide receiver becomes the guy. So it seems like Wyatt Osborne, the next name there in line. On the defensive side of the ball, the names we've mentioned, Sowards, Schweigen, a beyond linebacker. Chase Wheatley will also be a wide receiver option. That's one of those names that we were familiar with last year on the both sides of the ball, but as a wide receiver, certainly he'll be back as a defensive back. Wyatt Osborne also as a defensive back. A lot to be excited about here. Obviously, the big news in recent weeks, Cullen Schweigen committing to Western Illinois University. So whether he'll play offense or he'll play defense, I mean, I think either way, this is an athlete that any college program is going to want on their sideline and want in their program, and he's committed now to Western Illinois. Mitch, start with kind of Schweigen and the impact that he has had over the years, and that now it's his senior year, and, you know, no doubt about it, he's the leader of this program.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that we're entering his senior year. We've been covering him for so long as a big part of this show, really. So, yeah, excited to see how his journey comes to a close. Will go down as one of, if not the best quarterbacks in Rockridge history, one of the best players that we've had the pleasure of covering on this show. But he's not alone. So I think there's a lot of excitement with this Rockridge team, and equal parts question marks to answer, right? They lost a lot. They got to replace 3 of the 5 starters on the offensive line. Same thing on the defensive side. So we've talked a lot about how this division and how competitive it's going to be this year. And the defending champs have work to do, I think. I'm not going to say that they're not doing that in the offseason by any stretch of the imagination. But what I mean is they've got arguably the best quarterback in the coverage area. They've got some great pieces coming back. So how quickly can they get this new look Rockets team up and running? Because, like we mentioned, week in and week out in this division is going to be tough.
Ty, I felt like last year at the beginning of the year, Sam Graves and that team had mentioned they needed to replace and needed to have some offensive line play develop throughout the season. And by the end of last year, it felt like their offensive line became a strength for them. So is that, something you see again this year, where you can find some guys to step up in the next man up mentality in a program that's had a lot of success over the years?
That's what it's going to have to be for them again this year. I think they have 1 or 2 offensive linemen back from last year. It feels like every season, or at least the last handful, they come into the year with, at least 2, sometimes 3 spots along their offensive line where you think, where are they going to, find the piece to replace the kid they lost last year? And every year it feels like by the time we get to week 7 or week 8, that just some random sophomore or junior kid that has never played offensive line before is having an all conference type season. That happened with their center, Kanan Mumma, a year ago. But I think offensively for them, with the backfield they have of Schweigen, who was probably the best small school quarterback in the state, and Thomas Sowards, who's just been a fantastic running back. I mean, teams are going to struggle to stop them just because of how talented they are, and that's not even taking into account what Schweigen can do throwing the ball. We could go through the numbers. There's no point to really. I know he's scored, I think, 94 touchdowns combined passing and rushing through his junior season. So he's great. Thomas Sowards is great, and I think he's underrated because of how much publicity, and rightfully so, that Schweigen gets, but he's such a good player. And then, they do have to find some production at their receiver spots this year too. The Steele brothers, Owen and Liam, graduated, who were big pieces for them last year. Chase Wheatley, Wyatt Osborne, who you mentioned, were really nice, maybe, they weren't the number 1 and number 2 receivers, but they did a great job kind of possessing the ball, first downs. They had a handful of touchdowns between the 2 of them as well. Rockridge has a transfer that is new this year. Quinn Zimmerman is his name. He's been a kid who's been at Sherrard previously, who will likely play wide receiver and defensive back for them. So a 2-way starter that's a newcomer will help them out. But again, it comes down to, I think, up front for them. And then defensively, they've been just fantastic the last couple of years, but man, they lost some really, really good players on defense from that team last year. And I think what it does is I don't want to say puts more pressure on, but they're going to rely much heavier on Schweigen and Sowards on defense, where they both played pretty much every snap defensively last year. But, this year they're like the top two guys on their defense. And that just, it always, no matter who you are, and he's a great athlete and he's never got hurt before, but it just makes you nervous when your quarterback is like a really important linebacker on defense too. That's a lot of contact he's going to take. So I hope that he can stay healthy, because he's great to watch. But yes, this is a team that, the strengths are what they are, and what they are, and it's hard to stop them because of how good that their top 2 or 3 skill guys are. So with Cullen Schweigen at quarterback, I don't care who the other 10 kids are on the field, you normally have a pretty good chance, especially in regular season games. So I expect another year where they should contend for a conference title.
Yeah. Mitch, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to believe that they can't compete in this conference. I think we're going to see a pretty good game and learn. We're going to talk about Monmouth-Roseville here in a minute, but I think we're going to learn a lot about both teams in week 2 when Rock Ridge goes on the road to play the Titans. And looking at kind of the last 2 games of Rock Ridge's season, Newman and Princeton. So I've said it enough. Don't need to keep repeating myself. It's just going to be a tough division, because I think there are 4 teams that you could legitimately say this is going to be our champion at the end of the year. And that's exciting. So really excited to see Rock Ridge is going to do. Really excited to see Cullen's senior season, how he can close out his just tremendous career. And as we stop talking about the Rock, I'm just excited for this division as a whole.
Well, what some of our biggest fans from Reynolds, Illinois would say, Rockets by a million. So
that's right.
No,
put it on a shirt.
We should put it on a shirt. Absolutely.
They've probably got plenty of shirts that say it.
No, we talked about it in our preview last year, Ty, that this Three Rivers Rock division is such a fascinating division to follow along with, because last year was the same way as it is this year. There's, Mitch pointed out, a handful of teams. There are so many what I call like X Factor games, right? Where they're almost toss-ups week in and week out, and they will determine this conference, and it's really tight. And I'm again, like last year, really interested to see how it all plays out, because I think there's a lot of talent here, and it's going to be, every week in the Three Rivers battling for that Rock division title. So we've talked about all the teams now, and we've said that there's a lot of parity and a lot of talent, but we got to put ourselves out there. We got to put ourselves on the line. So I'll let you boys battle it out. Who's picking first? Who's making the bulletin board material first here?
I can go first, I guess.
Oh, look at that.
This is challenging. Now, in our preseason coaches and media poll that we put together at WRMJ, the Rock division, I think the coaches picked Newman and the media picked Rock Ridge as the favorite. Each poll was decided by 1 point. So
I thought was it reversed? I thought it was.
It might have been reversed. Let me pull it up real quick. Hold up. I'm scrolling up. It was coaches Rock Ridge, media Newman. You are correct. I had it backwards. I typed that in and finished it today. Unbelievable. But yes, in either way, it's going to be, I think, so closely contested, and not just those two. We talked about Riverdale and Erie Prophetstown, and even Mercer County and Orion need to take bigger steps forward. But I think there's potential for both of those teams to compete in this division. This is really hard. It's a hard league to pick. I really think there are 3, even 4 teams you could say that, man, this team realistically could win this conference outright. Though, because the most important position on the field is quarterback. Now, Rockridge does have question marks. I'm definitely not disputing that, but I just think in every game they play, they're going to have the best player on the field, and I think that's worth something in high school football especially. So I give the Rockets the slight nod as the favorite in the fall of 2026 to repeat, but I think any of those other three top teams we mentioned, Riverdale, Erie, Prophetstown, and Newman, could also win the league. But I'm going Rock Ridge.
Mitch, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in probably each of the last couple of years, I've predicted Rock Ridge will win this division. I'm going to go a different way this year just because I think the experience that Newman brings back with kids that have been playing for 3 years at every level of the field, every phase of the game, new quarterback, sure, but a tremendous coaching staff, a tremendous group of kids, and a lot of experience coming back, a lot of snaps that have been playing for Newman back on this roster. I think this is the year they can get it done. I'm going Newman as my Rock Division champ this year.
All right. I am the last one to pick here. Both those names, I think, are obviously the top two. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Riverdale or Erie Prophetstown pulls an upset in there and things get weird and things get crazy in that division and they find themselves on top. And if that happens, I think that's a ton of fun. I think this division would be a lot of fun to follow if that happens. Ty, you kind of stole my thunder. I agree with you that I said it last year when Rock Ridge played Newman, heads up, that I was going to pick the team that had the best player on the field. And that's Colin Schweigen. He was the quarterback last year and linebacker. He's a quarterback and linebacker again this year. I think that's where I'm giving the edge because you just look at QB and linebacker positions and you have that guy out there. That I'm gonna lean Rock Ridge, but I will say I would agree it's really close. I love covering this division because it's so much fun the last few years where there is so much talent and so much parity, and it's going to be great the way it plays out.
So that said, we're headed towards a tie between Riverdale and Erie Prophetstown as our division winners here. Now that
I was just gonna say, I'm hoping like everybody beats everybody. We have like a 4-way tie for the conference championship. That'd be pretty fun. But yeah, week 8, Newman at Rock Ridge. That's the last week of conference play.
Yes,
that'll be a great game. And really, I mean, it's not.
You also have EP Riverdale that week.
Yes,
so
that's what I was going to say.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. That is going to be cue up the instant reacts for that week right now because it's going to be an episode you're going to save. It's going to be awesome. That's really exciting. All right, boys. Well, there we go. There's our look at the Rock Division. Let's hit a quick break and we'll jump into the Mississippi. This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodman representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodman website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodman representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodman of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodman of America.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com.
Hey there, local high school football fans. This is Sean Considine, a Byron Tiger and Iowa Hawkeye alumni and now an LPL financial advisor. I'm passionate about high school football because it's the purest form of the game where communities come together. You can find me in my Byron office most days until I run off to football practice. I'm happy to talk about football or the markets. I'll leave that up to you. I want to wish everyone across Illinois a safe, successful high school football season.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.
So here we go. Mitch, as you called out, we're jumping into the Mississippi. So I guess
sure are.
No pun intended, however you want to take it. We're jumping into the Mississippi. Princeton Tigers, Ryan Pearson had them at 6-4 a year ago. They lost in the first round of the playoffs. On offense, they returned 6. On defense, they returned 5. A program that's had a lot of success over the years, but it's been Monmouth-Roseville that stepped up and become the champ of the conference and the big name in the conference. But I think it's the Princeton Tigers with that sour taste in their mouth. They've had a lot of success, and they're sitting here playing runner-up the last few years in this conference. But you look at what Ryan Pearson has done and what he brings back here, I think there's reason to be excited and to keep your eye on Princeton every single year. You look at quarterback Jack Oster, he steps in at that position. Brennan Emmett at fullback. Aiden Agushi is a name we called out a few times last year at running back. You have Reese Pearson and also Lane Guskowski at running back as well. So some depth there in the backfield. Luke Laporte, a tight end, a name we're familiar with in Laporte for Princeton, certainly. So Luke will be there at a tight end position. On the defensive side of the ball, Deacon Gutschall as a defensive end, Abe Longville as a linebacker, Andrew Gianquinto at linebacker as well, Caleb Caldwell as a free safety, and Noah Gutschall at cornerback. So I think it'll be a new-ish group, some names we have heard over the years. But Mitch, overall, getting into this Princeton Tiger team, what are your thoughts here?
Well, you just mentioned it. You know, if you think of it from 30,000 feet, 7 of the last 10 years, Princeton has won this division.
Yeah.
It's just the last 2 years they haven't, so they kind of get just put back behind Monmouth-Roseville. And again, there's reason for that. Monmouth-Roseville has been very, very good, but let's not forget who Princeton is and what they're capable of. But I think this will look like a different Princeton team. I think just from a personnel standpoint, I don't expect their offense to be changing much, but anytime that you're going to have to replace the production that a guy like Casey Etheridge put together over the last 4 years. Certainly, Ty, I'm just kind of reading the stats off of your article, 1,500 yards and 22 touchdowns last year. There's a lot to try and make up in the aggregate, but seeing these juniors and seniors who have had playing time in the past, we've seen Princeton do this year in and year out, right? If it wasn't Etheridge, it was a new name or a different name before him or a different name before him. They always seem to have someone waiting in the wings to really break out. So who's it going to be this year? They've got a lot of candidates, I think. Defensively, they hung tight a lot last year, only allowing 22 points per game, maybe more than they would like to, maybe more than they're accustomed to. But they've got some guys like Longville and Guskowski and Laporte all coming back. So they definitely have experience on that defensive side, and it should pay dividends for them here as they try to compete in the Mississippi.
Yeah, Ty, what do you see out of this Princeton Tiger squad heading in?
Yeah, Mitch, I agree with a lot of what he said because, you know, it is going to be a much different looking team. You mentioned Casey Etheridge, the year he had and the career he had at Princeton. And then, you know, their quarterback last year too, like it's something like 2,000, more than 2,000 of their 2,600 rushing yards as a team graduated. So they have, of course, a lot of production to pick up there. And I know that their senior class isn't huge, really, where they played a lot of sophomores last season. I think they're kind of looking at a lot of sophomores to play significant roles at the varsity level for Princeton again this year, too. But again, it just is a program that, like, you just trust them. You know, you just trust what Coach Pearson does, and you just trust that they're going to be really competitive and well coached, and they're going to play hard. And I think for them, they're really motivated because they had won 7 conference championships in a row, and in the last 2 years, they've come up short, and it's not just they've come up short, but they kind of got beat up by Monmouth-Roseville in both of those games that they've lost to them the past couple of seasons. So I think, they're a group that really wants to get back on top of the conference. I think that a conference championship is something that people, I think every team wants to win, but I think, in some specific instances, maybe it can mean a little more to a team. And I think this year they really are looking to get back on top of the conference. So I'm really looking forward to that game when they meet up with Monmouth-Roseville, because that should be quite a battle this year.
Yeah, I think overall, Mitch, we've talked about it for years, and I guess Ty, we've talked about it as well, but I've been really impressed with Ryan Pearson's coaching resume going back over his career, and then obviously coming into Princeton and what he's done here. I've been really impressed with the way he's able to take the talent he's got and turn it into something and take it to that next level. And last year, at times, it was a struggle, right? And it didn't fully look like that Princeton squad that we had seen in the past few years. So I think this team, they were motivated a year ago. I think there's extra motivation with the way the season ended for them last year. I think they're hungry. And I think that this Ryan Pearson as a leader of the program will get them in the right mindset and will get these kids ready to play. I think they're going to be a team to watch within this division, no doubt about it. Mitch, what do you think?
Yeah, we'll get into it, but I think this will come down to, as it has the past couple of years, it'll come down to Monmouth-Roseville and Princeton, and we'll save our predictions for later. But like you just said, that Week 4 game going to Monmouth-Roseville, and keep in mind, going back to their schedule, and we'll talk about them in a minute, they don't have to go on the road to play Rock Ridge. They don't have to go on the road to play Princeton. They don't play Newman at all. So I think the way that their schedule sets up for them is really going to be a factor in this. But I think we'll know who's going to win this division in that Week 4 game. And as Ty mentioned, it should be a very, very exciting matchup between two teams that are going to look a lot different than they did last year.
Yeah. Well, starting this season, Princeton will be on the road at Riverdale. So a team we already mentioned, a team we're pretty excited about on the Rock side of things. I think that's a really interesting crossover game to start the season. I'm very interested to follow that one.
Yeah, they get Riverdale and Newman before playing Monmouth-Roseville. So they're in their first 4 weeks, Princeton's really going to have some tough teams coming their way.
Yep.
On the road for all three of those two.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah. So, and actually it's worth noting Princeton ends their season hosting Rock Ridge. So that one will be in Week 9, potentially a huge game for both teams, depending on where they end up.
Could be the de facto TRAC championship, as we've seen in years past.
Which I love that. When that plays out that way, that's the best.
Yep.
So, no doubt about it. So let's talk about the Sherrard Tigers. Zach Waggle takes over the Sherrard Tigers program. They were 2-7 a year ago under head coach Dan McGuire. Going back a few years, Brandon Johnston, it felt like that program was close. They were getting close to taking the next step. They returned 3 on offense. They returned 3 on defense. Before we get into the particulars, into the names, Ty, this is a program that we've talked about like they've been right there. And I know it hasn't materialized, but they haven't been that far away. But Zach Waggle takes over a program that, something's got to change. They're trying to do something to build some confidence, build some momentum here.
Yes, it's a program that the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years especially has been a lot closer than maybe it seems. And you just look at the win-loss record. A handful of seasons ago, they went 3-6, and I think lost 4 games by 12 points or less, and 3 of them by 1 possession that season, including a game where they led Rock Ridge basically the whole night and then gave up a late touchdown. That was 3 seasons ago at this point. And then last year, it just is an unfortunate year because they had a pretty talented senior group a year ago where they go 2-7. But they lose 2 crazy games to Hall and Mendota, where they basically are playing without their best player for 5 quarters across those 2 games. They had a game against Mercer County where their best player, Carter Brown, got hurt in like the first quarter, and they could have easily won 5 games last season. They won 2. But they had a gigantic senior class graduate. It was something like 14 kids out of 32 or 33 in the whole program. So, coming into this season, and it's kind of been the story with Sherrard the past handful of seasons, is the numbers game, right? And they had to, forfeit a game last year because of a sickness outbreak that happened. They didn't have enough kids to play against Princeton last year in week 3, I think it was. So I know when you look at their roster this year, their senior class is really small. It's like 3, 4, maybe 5 players. Their junior class is a decent sized number, but I think over half of their kids, 9 through 12, are freshmen in the program. So it's something that for this program, and they've played like 2 JV games the last couple of years, I think it's imperative for them to play junior varsity games this season. I know this is like a varsity podcast we're talking about, but just for the program, their freshman group, it's a big number. They think they're talented kids. They're really high on them. They have to keep those kids out, and you can't have those kids not play a game the whole season or throw them to the wolves in varsity games where they have no chance to compete. I think they have. It's a hard situation to be in, and I think they've probably had some difficult conversations about, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this season? From when I've talked to people, they're confident they're going to get through a varsity season. They're confident they're going to get through a JV season too. I hope that's the case, but look, the blueprint is there, right, by another program in this conference. It's a hard decision to make sometimes, but sometimes you have to make the decision, right? I'm not saying that Sherrard should cancel their season or whatever, but if they have enough kids to play varsity and it's safe and they're upperclassmen, do it by all means. But they have to let those freshman kids play games this season. That just is the fact of the matter. We cover Sherrard really closely, and to me, that's the big story for them this season. Is it's hard because you need to do right by the kids who have played for 4 years, and the senior kids deserve to play varsity football. But if it's not safe, and if you're playing freshman kids by attrition, you shouldn't play varsity football games. And I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but it gets to a point where if a couple of kids get hurt or something like that happens, that's the situation they're going to be in, and you just can't do that. So that's my outlook on Sherrard. I think that, they have some upperclassmen talent, but the numbers just aren't there this year, I think, for them. But I like what Coach Weigel has said is very positive. I saw him working at a 7-on-7 event, really hands-on with the varsity team. And then what I loved is he was super, super hands-on with their JV group too, and the varsity team wasn't playing. So it's a reclamation project in that program. They've struggled for a long time, and you have to get in at the ground floor. I've really liked what I've heard from him. I liked what I've seen from him. So this is year 1 of hopefully, a long run for him. He's a really young guy, but there are challenges at Sherrard that we've talked about for years when it comes to football. But the thing that I like about there is you can win there. They're successful in pretty much everything else athletically. They've had a great run the last couple of school years, really. So if you can get people to buy in, that's a community that will support you. So I wish him the best of luck this season moving forward, but it will be a challenge just because, those numbers, it's hard to get through seasons when the numbers aren't great like that.
Yeah. I think I was really impressed talking to Coach Weigel. It's his first head coaching job. So, there's parts of it that maybe you need to weather the storm, right? Like he's stepping in, he's going to try his best to rebuild this program. And I don't know if it'll happen overnight, but what I really like, what I heard from him, and you talked about his commitment level in being hands-on and coaching. I really am impressed with kind of the way he really dives into film, calls himself a film junkie, and really he watched every game of Sherrard last year twice over to kind of see what happened, what worked, what didn't work. So I think I really love the idea of he's really analyzing all of it and trying to figure out what will work moving forward. I think looking at this, roster, like you said, small senior group, but a good group of juniors that have a lot of talent here. Landon Clark, a running back and a defensive back. You have Harper Farwell as a tight end and also an offensive lineman. You have, he'll be on the defensive end as well. Stephen Hollins, a fullback and a linebacker. Corbin Devlin, a tight end and a defensive end. Javen Jones as a defensive back. He'll be a senior this year. So I think it's a young overall group, but hungry, high effort, high character group. And I think that's a good foundation to start. There's some talented players here, and there's some savvy players on defense. Can you turn it into positive momentum? Whether that plays out in wins or just plays out in, being competitive week in and week out, and you find, you pull an upset somewhere along the way. I want to see, obviously, like all of our programs, I want to see success. And so I think that Coach Waggle is jumping in and really starting with the fundamentals, blocking, tackling, just playing smart football and getting back to the film study that he does. I'm thinking he'll have his players playing smart football. Mitch, what do you see in this roster? What do you see in this program?
Well, I think you guys have really, really touched on everything. This is going to be a building year for Sherrard, and to Ty's point, it's how safely can you do that? If you're going to have low numbers and they're going to be young, obviously they want to play. The coaches want them to play. We want them to play, but the development is the bigger goal than the game. And when we've seen programs go through down periods, let's just call it, of low participation or just a younger group in general, we mentioned Riverdale. The blueprint is there for how they were able to do it, and it doesn't have to mirror that by any means, but they're not going to be new. Programs have walked down this path before, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And again, if you're going to develop, hopefully they have the opportunity to do that safely so that they can continue to build that program back up and move forward.
Yeah. Sherrard, they will have a challenge in week 1. They'll go on the road to Newman on a Saturday afternoon. So
their schedule every year is like that. They never get to ease into a season. I mean, the one year it was Rock Ridge, Newman, Princeton back to back to back for them. I think this year they play Rock Ridge week 3.
Yep.
And that just is the thing too. I talk about this with Sherrard football all the time. It just feels like they can never catch a break in any way, shape, or form, whether it be the schedule or injuries or a weird hand, foot, and mouth outbreak last season, and then a weird ejection where their best player stiff arms a kid and gets thrown out of the game and then can't play for basically their 6 most pivotal quarters of the season. And this year, I think one of their, junior kids broke a leg in an 11-on-11 workout. So they're already down, an upperclassman. It's just but the thing, though, that kind of why I'm saying this is because the last handful of years where all these things have kind of gone wrong that have been out of the kids' control. I mean, again, this is now the 3rd coach in 3 years for them. Those kids play so hard, man. They really do. They battle and they tough it out, and they will this season too, because that just is kind of how they are. But that's one thing that I think is really impressive about that group of kids is, despite the kind of cards being stacked against them in many ways, like last year especially, they played so hard. And I know it's a lot of those kids were around that team last year and were a part of that team last year. So I expect the similar type of fight from them this year, and I hope they're able to see some success. And like Greg was saying, success is defined differently from program to program, right? Princeton's success is different than Sherrard's right now, right? They're just at different levels. And I think Sherrard can have a successful season for whatever that is. It's year 1 of a new coach, like we've talked about, low numbers. If they can get through it, play hard, there's a lot that I think they'll be able to take away from this year. And you never know. I mean, if you're able to field a team you never know, what type of competitiveness you can put out there. So, like I said, I wish the best of luck to those kids. I know they'll play really hard, like always.
Well, and 5 of their games are against teams that won 3 or less last year. So
Right.
it's not a complete gauntlet like we've seen or teams that we've talked about already. Sure, Newman's on there, Rock Ridge is on there, Princeton's on there, Monmouth-Roseville's on there. So those 4 certainly are going to be tough. And I'm not saying any of the other games won't be, but what I'm saying is there are teams that are in maybe not the same situation, but maybe similar types. When you talk about the Orions or the Kiwanis, Mendotas, there's a little bit of that going on in this division. And so there could be games there where if they're healthy and then playing well, they're going to have a shot. So, yeah, it's going to be tough, but it's as long as everyone's safe, I think we can see good things out of Sherrard.
Yep. And Ty, back to your point that, success looked different 4 years ago for Riverdale compared to what success for Riverdale looks like going into this season. So I think that there's a blueprint already laid out in the Three Rivers that shows you can get back there. It's possible. So I think that for Sherrard, they're at the ground floor. They're starting out and see where they can get. So, all right. Well, speaking of another team looking to make a turnaround, Kewanee Boilermakers. Last year, no way to sugarcoat it. It was tough. It was a really tough season for Kewanee. Head coach Matt Taylor, they went 0-9, but here's the good part. They return, if these numbers are correct, 10 starters on offense and another 10 on defense. That's remarkable. A lot of players that saw a lot of varsity action, and I don't care win or loss or what it was last year. I think it's a lot of game experience. They see varsity speed and they get used to it. That should pay dividends heading into 2026. We'll talk about some players here. I think it starts, we were really excited about running back Ace LaFollette last year. He's a junior this year. I've seen, signs of, him over the years. I think he'll be an impact player. Eli Dennison is a junior as well. He'll also be a running back for that squad. Leon Taylor is a junior. He'll be a quarterback. So already I just named 3 juniors that, they've struggled last year at the varsity level. Can that pay off now? Looking at first team receiver Chris Crow, Damian Taylor as a senior, Carter Ensley also as a senior wide receiver. And on the offensive line, Cannon Griffin, Camden Hicks, Jesus Martinez, and Juan Zepeda. So there's a lot there. Just a lot of names. It's 10 on offense, right? Another 10 on defense. Crow and Taylor and Ensley. Liam Slover is a senior. LaFollette, Dennison, Malik Diop as a senior linebacker, and Griffin, Robert Taylor, and Martinez again on the defensive line. So this team has had to show a lot of resilience. It was tough last year, but man, Kewanee was, like Ty, I think we talked about it last year. Kewanee's been a roller coaster over the last 5-6 years where there's peaks and there's valleys, and they're in a valley and they're trying to come back out of it.
That's what I was going to say is for whatever reason, their year to year is so sporadic. It feels like where a guy was looking at that when I was starting to do some of my preseason stuff. So 2022, 9-2, or 2021, 9-2, 22, 4-5, 23, 8-2, 24, 5-5, and then 25, 0-9. So it's just like this up and down from year to year that is just almost defies description, really. So, and like you said, I mean, when you have 10 starters back on both sides of the ball, I don't care, what level of success you had. That's a lot of snaps that those kids played. And as you went through, I mean, most of those kids are juniors this year. It was a really young team that they put out on the field last season. Like we were just talking about with Sherrard, when you're playing freshmen and sophomores at the varsity level, especially in football, I mean, it's just hard to compete physically for 9 weeks and for entire games. But you mentioned some of their kids, like Chris Crow is a kid who's just a fantastic multi-sport athlete, really impressive basketball player, great track and field athlete at Kewanee too. Ace LaFollette's played, a lot of snaps ever since he was a freshman for the Boilermakers. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to think, really. Like I said, like we've talked about, it's just this up and down thing over the last handful of years with them. But with the amount of talent they have back, I mean, they're like a team that, as I've said, like you can tell I'm kind of struggling for words to even say because I'm not sure what I expect out of them. I'm really not. Like, they could finish third in this conference. I wouldn't really be that surprised. I mean, last year they were 0-9 and really struggled to compete with anybody, but I don't know. So I don't know. We'll see, I guess. Week 1 will be interesting to see. There's not much analysis I can give just because, as I've said, it was a struggle last year. Basically, everybody's back. They're all a year older, bigger, stronger, faster, however you want to say it. But the Kewanee Boilermakers, man, they just are a anomaly to me. So we'll see what 2026 brings.
All right. So, Mitch, Ty can't figure it out. So what do you got? Help us figure it out.
Well, I think with 10 starters on both sides of the ball coming back from an 0-9 year, they're battle tested, right? That's the good news. The bad news is that their battles are going to come in the first 3 weeks of the season, going to Rock Ridge, hosting Newman, and then going to Erie Prophetstown. Now, the schedule lets up a little bit after that, but I think we'll learn more about this Kewanee team in those first 3 games. Truthfully, harshly, I don't know that they'll win any of those 3. But then when you get into week 4 and 5 against Sherrard and Mendota, I think that's when we'll see the strengths of this Kewanee team start to come out. Maybe a reset on the season just a little bit. I agree with Ty. I think they can get to that mid. I don't think they're going to finish 0-9. Let me put it that way. I think they can get to that 3rd, 4th tier in this conference, maybe get to 3 wins. I think I could see it on the schedule. It's tough. They've got a lot of heavy hitters on this schedule coming off an 0-9 year. But look, 10 starters on both sides of the ball. That's the best in the conference. Lafala is a tremendous running back. They've got a lot of great names and a lot of great players. So who knows? Maybe the roller coaster that you talked about, Ty, they were in the valley and now they're shooting back up. So we'll see about the Boilermakers here in 26, but I do not see them going 0-9. No.
Strap me in.
Mitch, I'm going to segue off what you said. And I agree. 0-9 is not going to happen this year for this Boilermaker squad. And I think when you look at the new playoff structure, I think it's guaranteed Kewanee's going to play an extra game this season. Now the question is, are they good enough? Does that roller coaster swing back high enough to get them to a bye week? I don't know. We'll see. But I think that this is one of those teams, again, where you look at the new playoff structure, and I think that Kewanee is going to play an extra game this season. How far they go, it will, yet to be determined in this conference. But I think that there's unknowns, and we'll find out some things along the way here. They'll be tested early, but I'm curious to see kind of what this experienced group can do in this division. All right, let's talk about the Hall Red Devils. Nick Sterling took over as head coach of his alma mater last year, and he led them they were 3 straight conference wins to improve to 3-2 midway through the season before they dropped their final 4 games of the year. So certainly not the way they wanted to end their season, but there was a spark there in the middle. And so I think that Nick Sterling can look to build off that a little bit. Some key returners. They have senior Colton Crowther as a running back and a linebacker. Caden Elena as on the offensive line. You also have Alex Tucker on the offensive line. He'll also be a linebacker as well. You have Evan Vashia on the line for offense and for defense. Keegan Marroquin as a wide receiver and a defensive back. Jackson Pinter as a wide receiver and a defensive back. Chase Sterling as a wide receiver and a defensive lineman. From what we've read, there will be an open competition between several players to take over at quarterback, Houston Yannick or junior Tyson Zuniga or sophomore Gage Olson. So they will step in for Braden Curran, who took over last year in week 6 after Dylan Glynn went down as QB1. So all 3 of those players coach thinks will be key players in their offense regardless of their role. So maybe that's some good depth that you have kind of built in. And, Mitch, once in a while, that competition in the offseason or getting into the regular season isn't a bad thing. You get players kind of hyped up early.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just with this new schedule and trying to get everything up to speed maybe a week sooner than you may would have liked. It's still the same amount of time. It's just a week sooner. But I think this Hall team takes a step forward. I think their schedule is favorable. 4 starters back on both sides of the ball. I think their line is going to be a key for them. Certainly we talk about winning the trenches. Could help them in some of these games. They're going to start off with Murco in week 1, but they got Orion, they got Mendota. So I think we're going to find out how Coach Sterling has these guys ready to go. Maybe the quarterback situation is a little more solidified by then. Certainly they're going to be tested in week 2, hosting Riverdale. But I would think when they get into that week 4 and in week 5, the first kind of half of their season, they'll have things figured out and they'll be able to make a run to get into that 3-4 win range and get a postseason berth.
So Ty, you'll get a look at the Red Devils in week 1. They're headed to George Pratt Memorial Field. What do you think about this Red Devil squad? They're always a team that they're in the mix in the middle of this conference. In the last few years, that's always been Princeton and Monmouth-Roseville they've had to deal with, and Kewanee before that. So
I will say this before I get into that. I had to go to Hall in Spring Valley for a basketball game last year. Enjoy the trip to Aledo. That is a long, brutal trip. Aledo to Spring Valley, not a fun one.
I think if I hear you talk every time we say this, I think that's more of an Aledo problem because Aledo's hard to get to.
It is. No, I agree.
Ty, Aledo doesn't have a state championship in pork chop, so I wouldn't be complaining too much if I had to go to Spring Valley.
You're right. They got 6 in football, though.
So Hall had their time. They've had their day too. So
true.
It's been a little while. But Hall's had their time, and they got the pork chop title under their belt.
No, sorry, I get defensive about my hometown. But no, I think
defensive about the pork chop operation there. How about that?
Yeah, you're right. But with Hall, I think that like we talked about Mercer County earlier, it's an interesting week 1 game because Hall is similar when you kind of went through the pieces they're replacing. It's a lot of their like yardage and scoring production at quarterback and their running backs last year. Chase Sterling, you mentioned him. He was a first team all-conference player on both sides of the ball as a sophomore last year as kind of a tight end receiver and then a defensive end, I think, too. So it's a similar story with them in Mercer County, which is what makes that week 1 game so interesting, I think, is there's a lot of kind of new faces for both teams. And I do think, like to your point, that Hall's remaining schedule is probably a little bit easier maybe isn't the word, but not as
manageable. It's manageable.
More manageable, not as daunting as the 6 weeks that follow for Mercer County. So I just think that game will be really fun to kind of see how it plays out. But I agree, and similarly to what I was saying about Kewanee, I think Hall is in a similar spot where that 3rd spot in the league, while I don't really foresee any of these teams overtaking Monmouth-Roseville or Princeton, like that number 3 spot in the conference on that side is up for grabs, really, I think. And if you can finish there, that's at least 3 wins probably. If you can get a win or 2 in the crossovers, you're talking about a 5-win season.
5's not out of the question, I don't think, looking at their schedule. I picked them in my poll to you to finish 3rd in the division. I think it's there. It's like we just said, it's a manageable schedule.
Yep. All right, should we talk about the Mendota Trojans? The Mendota Trojans, Jim Eustace starts his 2nd season at Mendota after he took over leaving St. Bede. What he says heading into the season, they have a good foundation built last year and a good mix of experience and youth. They expect to be extremely competitive, is what he says. So, key players for the Trojans, senior Javier Hernandez, listed at quarterback, running back, and linebacker. So, very impactful player there in Hernandez. Jaden Leslie at running back and defensive end. Gavin Stevenson, running back, defensive back. Caden Taliani at tight end and linebacker, Cam Wasmer at running back linebacker, and junior Cannon Sheon on the offensive line. So this is a Mendota squad that has struggled the past few seasons. Last year, just 2-7. They made the playoffs in 2021, but they haven't had a winning season since 2014 when they went 6-4. So they haven't had a lot of success recently. Jim Eustace, longtime veteran head coach, been at several different places. I always think there's a jump from the first year to the second year at any program. We talked about it with Coach Lucas in Mercer County. So, Mitch, when you look at this Mendota squad, maybe there's something to be said about just getting familiarity with Coach Eustace and Coach Eustace getting familiar with the players here as they move into year 2.
I think you're right. It's a year under Coach Eustace, another year under Coach Eustace, I should say, with a full off season now. They got to replace a lot. They don't have a ton coming back, but those that they do have coming back, we talked about the running backs, Leslie Hernandez and Wasber. A lot of playing time last year for those three guys. They got guys on the line coming back like Camden that you talked about. So, yeah, I think looking at their schedule, it's kind of the same that they've got a week 1 game at Orion. I think we'll learn more about Mendota there before they play EP and Riverdale. Another team with a manageable schedule on this side of the ball, or on this side of the conference. It's just a matter of who's going to win these toss-up games that we think are manageable for each team. But I think, again, I don't know that they're going to be 2-7 once again, because I think they've got enough coming back. But it'll be interesting to see how Coach Eustace has these guys ready. I mean, they were 2-7 last year. The 2 years prior to that, they had won 1 game. So he got off on the right foot. It's just how do they take that next step, and what's that look like?
Yep. Ty, you do not have to make the trip to Mendota this year. I see it in the schedule here. So
no, I don't. I made it last year, and that's kind of something I want to talk about. Is because, and Mitch mentioned it, that they had won 1 game the previous 2 seasons before Coach Eustace took over, and they won 2 games last year. They were much more competitive last year too. Even in their losses, a lot of them were much closer games than they had been in the 3 or 4 years even previously. And I went to the last time I was at a game at Mendota before last year was I think 2 years previous to that, and the vibe was so much different last year than it was the previous time I was there. There was a crowd that was into the game. And this is a week 9 game last year with nothing on the line, but people were excited. They had a big crowd out there. There was noise. Whereas a couple years ago I went and it was just you could just tell there was really not a whole lot of, belief maybe is the word, or apathy maybe is the right word. And I think that feeling is gone, at least from what I've gathered. So, year number 2, like you said, Greg, I think there's always a step forward just because everybody's more familiar. And like Mitch said too, you have a full off season with everything. So I think that obviously Coach Eustace has had success where he's been before. And as we've talked about on this side of the league, there are winnable games. Now I don't know if Mendota is necessarily favored against this team or that team, but there are winnable games for them this year for sure. And I think, a lot of these interdivisional games will kind of come down to just whoever plays cleaner, because a lot of these teams feel like they're pretty similar and pretty evenly matched. And Mendota certainly is in that mix of teams that I think, if things go well, they theoretically, I think, have a chance to be number 3 in the conference, like I said, with Holland Kewanee too.
Yeah. All right. One more squad to cover here. The champs from the past couple seasons in this Three Rivers, Mississippi division. You have Monmouth-Roseville. So the Titans, led by Jeremy Adolphson, 10-2 a year ago, a 3A quarterfinalist. They got that huge win on the road at Bloomington Central Catholic. So they were 5-0 in the TRAC Mississippi a year ago. They return 3 on offense, 3 on defense. Not a big number there, but I think as we've come to see over the last few years, you trust what Jeremy Adolphson and what this Titans crew has coming back, that they're going to be pretty solid all the way around when you start talking about Offensive line, when you start talking about skill positions, defense and defensive line, I think everywhere across the board, they find guys that are going to step up. So a few of those names, Lars Berggren, a senior running back, he ran for almost 400 yards, 7 touchdowns. He had another over 100 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown in 8.5 games. Landon Montroy, he went over 1,200 yards, rushing, 20 touchdowns, first team all-conference. Those are the two big-name skill position players. You have a junior, Kane Johnson, stepping in at quarterback. Andrew Snyder is a sophomore. They expect to get some carries as well at running back. You start looking at Keegan Smith, a junior tight end and running back. On the offensive line, Braylon Hughes and Caleb Porter. So some names we're really familiar with on that offensive side of the ball. That continues to the defense as well. Lars Berggren, 29 tackles a year ago, 11 solo tackles, first team all-conference. He's entering his 3rd season as a starting safety, so he's going to be an impact player there for them on both sides of the ball. Andrew Snyder, that sophomore we mentioned, he'll be back. He started every game as a freshman, so they're really high on Snyder there, both on offense and particularly on defense. Keegan Smith will be a defensive back and a linebacker. He made an impact last year. He'll be entering his 3rd year as a starter. Caden Russell, a senior defensive back, 33 tackles, 14 solo, 5 tackles for loss. Ty Moore, a junior linebacker, and Landon Peterson, a junior defensive back. So, Mitch, I read through the gauntlet of names there. Some we've heard, some maybe we're getting familiar with, but a lot of starting experience coming back for this squad.
Yeah, if I had to guess who the top 2 rushers are going to be in this division, I think they both play for Monmouth-Roseville. I think Berggren is really going to have a breakout year. And it won't surprise me if Montroy is closer to 1,500 yards and 25 touchdowns this year. I think Montroy is arguably one of the best running backs we'll cover in our area, and I certainly in this division. So I think even with a new quarterback and maybe not as many starters coming back as they have had in years past, they're going to reload. And with those 2 guys running the ball, they're going to be able to control the clock like they like to do. I'm excited for Monmouth-Roseville. I think they're going to look a little different, but what they've got coming back and the experience that they've got of the guys coming back is going to set them up really well. And their schedule is a little bit front-loaded. And once they get to week 5, I think they win out, and they're going to be hitting the playoffs on a really good stretch.
Yeah. Ty, this is a program we've talked about over the years and what Jeremy Adolphson has built, and he said it going back years ago, that what he always wanted to build at Monmouth-Roseville was a team that coming into the season, that the name recognition alone gave them that edge, right? And he wanted to build a program where that was going to be the case. And I think that more than ever, you're getting there. Maybe you already are there, but I think now it's almost time to prove it, right? For this Titan squad, that they're the name now. They kind of are the name. So can they continue to prove it?
Yes, what he's built as a program, I think you just say it like simply like that. You know, everything they've done the last handful of years are things they have never done as Monmouth-Roseville before. They've been in the playoffs, 5 years in a row, maybe? I don't have that number off the top of my head. Double-digit wins for the first time ever last year. I think second ever trip at the quarterfinals last year. Back-to-back conference championships in the TRAC, which is never easy to do. And they've done it by building an identity. And that's something that, you know, I think all of the great programs, top-level programs have is in identity. And for Monmouth-Roseville, this year is the year where I think you'll really see if that's something that is going to stick, because they've had a number of these, you know, offensive linemen who feels like have played like 2 or 3 years that have all graduated now, and it's like a completely new group up front. But it's something that they kind of pride themselves on as being tougher and bigger and not necessarily faster, but stronger than the other team. And they really like to just run it right at you. And I know it's not a ton of different things they do. It just is kind of lining up and saying, okay, you probably know what we're going to do. Can you stop us? And I agree with what Mitch said. They have two, really high-level, top-of-the-line running backs. But like I said, though, completely new offensive line. They'll have a new quarterback this year, too. But I do think that with what they've been able to build, that identity will kind of maybe lead them early before they get kind of settled into the new roles and everything. But it's a program that definitely has a lot of pride and has had, back-to-back just outstanding years. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of a new look, not necessarily a new look because the kids are going to be, carrying the ball most of the time or kind of the names we know. But outside of that, kind of some new faces in there for them. And will be, kind of fun to follow how things go for them this year, coming off of, like I said, 2 great years the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, you mentioned that 5-year playoff streak that is currently, happening for this Monmouth-Roseville program. Jeremy Adolphson mentioned that this is their best summer workout attendance, going back through that streak. So I think that speaks to the buy-in, right? That these players see it now year over year, going back to when they were 8th grade or freshmen. They see what it takes to win, and it's proving to play out in this, in the results. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. Mitch, what do you see in this Titan squad?
Yeah, in addition to, again, what I think is going to be the best running backs in the conference, I just think it's that culture shift in this program. 5 straight playoff appearances. You mentioned what the summer workouts are looking like. So even though they're going to have new names on either side of the ball, I think they're going to be equipped for another run here.
All right, so I guess that leads right into our picks, our bulletin board material. Mitch, did you already kind of call it out there?
Yeah, I guess I did. I just think the trajectory of Monmouth-Roseville over the past couple of years has been so impressive. They're doing what Princeton did for so many years. I think this is a year that Princeton gets back into, I don't want to say making that a competitive game because I don't mean that whatsoever. I think they're closer maybe than they have been or that they were last year. So that week 4 game is really going to tell who wins this conference. I really do believe that. But for me, for all the reasons I just mentioned, 2 of the best running backs we're going to cover, a tremendous culture, and you mentioned the offseason that they've had. I've picked against Coach Adolphson before, and I've heard about it every time. So I'm going to go for the Titans to have a 3-peat in the TRAC, Mississippi.
Ty, you agree?
Here's what I'll say, everybody. To Mitch's point, we do these weekly picks once we get into the season, and when you pick against a team and they then win, there's not a group that lets you hear about it more than the Titans do, and I love that. I do love it. And the last 2 years, I think I've picked Princeton to win the conference. I've been wrong. I've picked Monmouth-Roseville to lose more games than they have the past couple of years in our weekly picks, and I've been wrong. I've heard about it every time. I've had videos sent to me. I've had tweets sent to me. At one of the holiday basketball tournaments in Macomb this year, Monmouth-Roseville, they were getting ready to play, and a couple of the kids came by me, and they asked me, why do you pick against it all the time? I said, well, I did like twice maybe. So through all of that, I'll take the Monmouth-Roseville Titans. Unethical. They're bullying me into it. They're threatening me into it. I'll take the Titans for a 3-peat.
I believe it was at a Love's gas station somewhere down Interstate 80 where the chant was heard from the back of the bus, never pick against the Titans.
Yeah.
So
an all-time instant reacts moment.
Yeah,
Exactly. From the bus.
So I'm going to follow suit, and I'm not going to pick against the Titans. I also say they are my favorite to win the conference. So there we go. That's the pressure's on now, right? Because now we are picking the Titans. So can they follow through? Can they get the job done? I'm going to say my sleeper team in this mix here. I think Princeton's going to be right up there. Can Kewanee, with the experience they have back and the talent they have back, can they upset somebody along the way? And can they get up in that top tier? That's just, I'm saying that maybe is a sleeper team to watch out for. So there you go. There's the TRAC. There's the Mississippi. That's the Three Rivers. Ty, you need to get yourself a Friday Night Traction shirt.
I do. Yeah, I do need to. I'll order one.
There you
I
go.
need to do that. Or maybe you should just bring one for me Sunday.
I was going to say, I could probably make that happen. I could probably figure that out.
Come on now.
So, all right, boys. Well, it's been a ton of fun, and I can't wait to get going. Ty, you going to jump in on some instant reacts when you're not driving back from here, there, and everywhere?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And by the way, we referenced our weekly picks, and guys, I've got big news for you, okay?
Yes.
We're expanding a little bit here. So do you want to hear our full, this is breaking news to you guys. Do you want to hear our full list of competitors for the year?
I can't. Well, let's go. What do we got?
All right, so it's us three, of course. Ty, Mitch, Greg. We have my dad back with us.
Yep.
Okay, we're not done adding yet. Matt Randazzo is joining us.
Yes.
It's like we got Dan Patrick. It's unbelievable. And then our sixth and final contestant. You want to know who it is?
Oh, God.
You guys know, don't you? You know who I'm about to say. It is the one and the only, the king of the Davenport public school system, Brian Stocking, who texted me today and gave me his conference championship picks. You know what? Can I read Stocking's conference championship picks? He sent them to me.
You should have let off with this time.
Yeah.
I can't believe you held on to this information for 2 hours.
Who do you think? Okay. Who do you think he has on the Mississippi side first as his favorite? Okay, it's Monmouth-Roseville, and we should all get this one right. Who's his favorite to win the Rock Division?
Give me Riverdale.
The Riverdale Rams,
Yes.
baby.
But he will say he has no biases. He has no biases.
He has that.
Of course not.
Because he texted me all those, and then I asked him. I said, "Do you want to be part of our track picks this year?" And he said, "Sure thing." And I popped the champagne. Let's
Did he
go.
already send you all 9 weeks already? I would imagine he has that ready to go.
No, but he asked me if I was going to be in Moline on Sunday, so I assume that Stock's going to be there.
Yes, Stocking is going to be in the house.
You just got like 50 more people to come now.
Well, that's one more cheap plug for the other bar in downtown Moline. This Sunday, August 9th, 4 to 6:30. We're going live. It's the second annual View from the West kickoff party. Brian Stocking is gonna be in the house. It's gonna be awesome.
Shout out to the other bar, but we might want to check what the Mark's availability is just to make sure it can have the capacity that we might be expecting with Brian Stocking.
The Stocking fan club.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's going to be
He's
great.
a bigger deal than Ella Langley coming to the Quad Cities. Is Stocking.
Brian Stocking is making the trip. He'll be in downtown Moline on Sunday, so we can't wait. So, all right, boys, that does it for the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. I can't wait to get into the instant reacts every week. It's going to be a ton of fun to cover both of these sides and see how it all plays out. We'll see everybody on Sunday at the other bar. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing, for following along. Next week, the Western Big Six preview. I haven't even told Matt Randazzo yet, but he's going to be in on that show, Mitch, to help us preview. So,
yeah, I figured he'd be on it.
So there you go. All right. Well, thank you to everyone who listens. We will see you at the other bar on Sunday in downtown Moline, 4:00. Be there.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. I encourage you to subscribe on YouTube and follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on X and Instagram to keep up to date on our latest news and content. You can also contact us through email, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com, to share stats, stories, or information. Thank you to everyone who listens and supports local football.